Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock and time to call our meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Midway Independent School Board, and we have a quorum. Everyone is here tonight. On behalf of the board, I would like to extend a warm welcome to those of you that are present and to our viewers online. We appreciate the time you have taken to join us and your interest in Midway ISD. It means a lot to us. At this time, please silence your cell phones if you have not done so already. And I want to remind you that the board's role is to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent and staff, approve budgets, set tax rates, approve contracts, approve personnel recommendations, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent and his staff. Also, I've forgotten to say this at the last couple of meetings, but for those of you all that are attending for recognitions, after we're done with all the recognitions, we will pause, and at that time, we are fine if you decide you want to go on and go home. We always love for you to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but you're welcome to leave then. And if you can just wait till then, it's nice for everybody that's being recognized to have everyone's attention till we're done with that part of the meeting. We start our meetings reading our mission statement and having one of our board members read it for us and just give us some thoughts on the mission statement and how they're thinking about it today. And that is Rick Tullis tonight.
Yes, so our mission at Midway ISD, we will maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. And so my thought on that, I'm like, hey, how can we do a good job in the school ecosystem of measuring short-term performance? But man, what if we think long-term? Are we being successful? And there's statistically about 80% of students that graduate from high school will, by their late 20s, be back somewhere close to their hometown. So as you can imagine, our area is populated with a lot of Midway graduates. Probably if you stop and think about it, your doctor, probably your lawyer. Hopefully you don't need both of them. I mean, a lot of the great, some of the best tradespeople I know in Waco have come through Midway. Anyway, on and on, engineers, whatever. So if you look at the last 20 years of the GDP growth in McLennan County, or since 2001 to now, our GDP, which is basically our productivity, has grown at almost an average of 5% growth year over year, which is strong. But if you look at the last 4 years, it grew on average 10% each year. So 4 years back to back of almost 10% growth, or over 10% growth, which is crazy. Now, Midway can't take credit for all that, but I think we should take credit for some of it in really seeing the success of the products of this school district going out in society and succeeding. I think we're doing something right. And anyway, proud to be a part of this.
Very well said. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next, we would like for everyone to join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, first up we have our February recognition days, and Rick, tell us, I'm just confused. We're going to do recognitions. And Rick, you're doing the recognitions tonight. Yes.
As soon as we get done with the pledge.
Yeah. Oh, I missed the pledge, everybody. I'm sorry. I told you I was a little out of it. I knew something was off. I'm sorry. Pledge of Allegiance. We have all these lovely kids from Woodway Elementary School and their principal, Nicole Geiger, here. So please come up to the microphone, and I apologize. Got ahead of myself.
I just thought we were shaking up things today and doing them in different orders. No problem.
Keep you on your toes,
Yep.
right?
Good evening, President Vick, MISD Board of Trustees, and Dr. Allen. I am excited tonight to introduce you to these outstanding students from Woodway Elementary. Aaron Can could not be here tonight, but we have Kinsley Gleim. Come on up. Ralph Parrott couldn't make it. We have Beckham Sandoval and Owen Sager. They were nominated for our Student of the Year and earned a seat on our Woodway Student Board. So,
Awesome.
awesome students. They are premier leaders of our campus and will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand. I pledge allegiance
Good job.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you, kids. Okay, next we'll have recognitions, which Rick will lead this evening and assist with that. And then but first we're going to talk about recognition days for February. Dr.
Recognition
Allen?
days for February. So February 2nd is Military Heroes Day. February 2 through 6 was National School Counseling Week. Thank you to our school counselors. February 16th was President's Day. We took that day off. And then February 19th is the State of Texas Anniversary Day. It is also Career and Technical Education Month, and we'll have a presentation on that in just a few minutes. And y'all, February is Black History Month, and I feel like it'd be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of Jesse Jackson as part of acknowledging the fact that it's Black History Month. And so that's our February recognition days this month. Ms. Vick.
Thank you very much. First up, we're going to talk about our All-State Band members, and Daryl Umhofer is going to do that for us.
Hey, thank you very much. It's my honor and pleasure to announce our All-State Band, Choir, and Orchestra members for this year. We'll start with our All-State Band from TMEA, Texas Music Educators Association. We're proud to recognize the outstanding student musician whose achievement represents the highest level of excellence in Texas, Emmanuel Maxey. Would you please stand up and join us? Emmanuel is a senior at Midway High School and was selected as the 2026 All-State Band Musician, piccolo in the Philharmonic Orchestra, which is pretty amazing. The other two instruments were bass clarinet and contrabassoon, if I'm not correct. And contrabassoon is the lowest of the low voices, not the lowest instrument, but the low voices. And piccolo is the highest, so that's the polar opposite right there. The band directors are Pam Hyatt, Sarah Moss, and Kenny Moss. Can they come up for a picture too? And we're very proud of Mr. Maxey and all of the work that he's done, and looking forward to a great college career from you, aren't we? All-State Choir. We have a number of choir students this year, so when I call your name, you can come on up and join us. Again, it's the highly competitive audition process where about 1,800 students are chosen out of the entire state, which is nearly 70,000 that start the process. These students were selected as the 2026 TMEA All-State Choir members. How about Millie Cherry? Come on up. She's second chair soprano too in the All-State Mixed Choir. Jack Davis, come on up. Third chair bass in the All-State Tenor Bass Choir, Caddy Eggleston. Senior and first chair alto 1 in the All-State Mixed Choir, and I'll talk about Mixed Choir in just a second. Bailey Fornwalt. Bailey's a sophomore, fifth chair alto in the All-State Treble Choir. Mark Hall. Mark's a senior, first chair bass 2 in the All-State Mixed Choir. Ashlyn Lestrap. Fourth chair soprano 1 in the All-State Treble Choir. Leangel Rodriguez. fourth chair, tenor 2 in the All-State Tenor Bass Choir. I watched his rehearsal and he never saw me. But that's okay. Elizabeth Trouth. She's a junior, fifth chair, soprano 2 in the All-State Treble Choir. And finally, Anthony Zavala. Fourth chair, bass in the All-State Tenor Bass Choir. The tenor bass choir, treble choir, and mixed choir all presented separate concerts at TMEA. The mixed choir got to perform for the general session on Thursday morning, and as stage manager for TMEA, I got to be right up front and listen to an amazing orchestra with 250 plus voices, knowing fully well that some of those voices were Midway voices, and it just made my day. The directors for our choir program are Caleb Overstreet. Come on up. Kayla Torp and Drew Jackson. I know Drew's here. As many of you know, this is our young, fresh choir team, and they have continued to represent and make Midway proud. So one more round of applause for choir. Yeah. And now for orchestra. We celebrate another remarkable student musician who also earned the highest honors, but this one is for orchestra with Glenn Eschman. Come on up. There we are. Glenn's a junior and was named in the All-State Symphony Orchestra, which is the top group, as 16th chair violin. Was it violin 1 or 2? 1. So I almost bumped into you a couple of times. I'm sorry. That group had the final concert of the entire convention, and it was just an amazing experience. And we're so proud that he was able to. This is your third year. Third year. So one more, you'll be great to go, right? So one more round of applause for Mr. Escherman. And the director of the orchestra is Terrence Guerrero. Come on.
Hey, Daryl, hang on just a second. Daryl. I received an email today at 4:16 informing me of your intent to retire, and it just seems to me like it would be wrong for this to pass without acknowledging your 25 years to the district and the touch that you've had to our programs and the contribution to our students and staff. I just wanted to take a second to say something before you step back over there.
Appreciate that.
Quietly behind the background like you normally
Go
are.
back behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very
Daryl.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Next up is Region 12 Counselor of the Year, and Kim Booth is going to do that for us.
Hello. We are proud to recognize one of our outstanding educators for excellence in student support and advocacy, Lindsay Ostrom, the school counselor at Chapel Park Elementary. Come on up, Lindsay.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
She was named the 2026 Region 12 Elementary Counselor of the Year by Education Service Center 12, Region 12. She was selected from 19 nominees across the region. Ms. Ostrom is recognized for her strong advocacy for students and her commitment to whole child support. She has served as a school counselor for 9 years, including 7 years in Midway ISD, and her impact is felt daily by students, families, and staff. Thank you, Ms. Ostrom.
Thank you. That's such a great honor. Next up is Education Results Partnership Honor Roll, and Dr. Ojima is going to tell us about this great honor roll we're on.
Thank you. Tonight, we're proud to recognize an important academic achievement for Midway. Midway ISD has once again been named an honor roll district by the Education Results Partnership, making this the second consecutive year our district has earned this distinction. Only 84 districts across the state were recognized this year. In addition, 6 Midway campuses were also named to the 2025 Texas Honor Roll, doubling the number of recognized campuses from last year. Those campuses are Midway High School, come on up, Hewitt Elementary, Spring Valley Elementary, oh, you're to the back. South Bosque Elementary, Park Hill Elementary, and Chapel Park Elementary. The Educational Results Partnership Honor Roll is especially meaningful because it focuses not only on student achievement, but on student growth over all student groups. It is also an important program because it is one of the few that partners business leaders with education leaders in order to identify these top schools that prepare students for success in college and in the workforce. So congratulations and thank you again for how you pour into our students, staff, every day, and your commitment to excellence and your commitment to our students. Congratulations.
I think it's good to note here that it says, 80 full school districts out of the state, and we have around 1,700 school districts, 1,200 school districts, sorry, I just let me go. And that's about the top 7%, right? 7%. So that's an amazing achievement, and we've done it now 2 years in a row, and I just think it says great things about our staff and how hard our students work as well. So kudos, that's fabulous. Next up is public comment, and tonight we have someone speaking for public comment. I'd like to call up to the microphone Kate Gomez, and she would like to speak about Speegleville that is on, oh, no, we're okay. We were going to wait. Would you like to stay and hear the public comments, or would everybody, I guess they'd like to go. Kate, I'm sorry, okay.
Less people.
I was going to have them leave afterwards. That's okay. We'll let them get out of the room.
Public speaking anxiety is everything. It just kind of.
Yes, I know. I'm like, anybody else? Does anybody else want to leave?
She knows it. Okay. Everybody ready? Yes. So, Ms. Gomez, you probably know how it works, but you have 3 minutes to speak, and I believe you want to speak about Speegleville.
Yes.
Mr. Witt's going to keep a timer, and so he will let you know if you do run over your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kate Gomez. This is my 8th year working at Midway ISD. I've worked both at Woodway Elementary, and I currently serve as the MTSS facilitator at Speegleville Elementary. I also have 5 children who have been part of Midway ISD. I want to thank you first for your dedication serving our district. I know that the decisions before you are complex and carry a significant impact for families, staff, and students. I'd like to frame my comments about the future of Speegleville around who we say we are as a district. Midway ISD's vision is innovation, commitment, and excellence. Our mission states that we'll maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. Our core beliefs affirm that every person has inherent worth and that every person can learn and has unique academic and social needs. These are powerful statements and commitments. It is why families move here. It is why teachers choose to work here. It's why many of us are sitting in this room tonight. Elementary students in particular are vulnerable learners. They're building foundational skills in literacy, numeracy, behavior, and social development that shape their entire educational journey. These early years require strong relationships, close monitoring, and individualized support. One potential scenario that's been shared with our teachers at Speegleville is the possibility of moving from two teachers to one in certain grade levels. This could create significantly larger class sizes in those grade levels. That reality makes it harder to maintain the learner-centered environment that Midway works to create. Our district goals call us to meet the needs of a diverse population, recruit and retain strong educators, and provide a safe and supportive environment. Large class sizes, particularly in kinder through second, put a strain on each of those commitments and on the teachers and campus leaders who work to uphold them. The Texas law recognizes this reality. Under the Texas Education Code, kindergarten through fourth grade classes are limited to 22 students per teacher, reflecting the importance of small class sizes during those foundational years. While districts may request waivers, the existence of this law underscores how critical manageable class sizes are for these young learners. If Midway is truly a sought-after district because of its excellence and supportive community, then equity must guide this process. No campus should carry a disproportionate burden. No group of students should experience overcrowding while others do not. I ask that Midway's vision of innovation, commitment, and excellence serve as the standard that guides this decision, ensuring that innovation is meaningful, commitment is visible, and excellence is experienced across all campuses by each student, regardless of their address. Let our actions match our words, and let every child in Midway receive the strong foundation they deserve. Thank you for your time and for your leadership.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Next on the agenda are the information items. We have the monthly financial report and the list of library books for procurement. Does anyone have any questions or want to discuss any of the information items? Okay, I see a no on that, so we'll go on to presentation discussion items, and the first one up is discussion of the future of Speegleville Elementary School. Dr. Allen.
I'm going to present from here so I can see y'all. It's a little bit of a lengthier presentation than I normally do, and so I want to make sure that I don't have to turn my head left and right to see anything that you might be trying to communicate as we go. So yes, ma'am, let me talk a little bit about Speegleville Elementary School this evening and start off by trying to answer the question, why are we talking about Speegleville Elementary School anyway? The building has been there since 1954. And what has brought the topic of Speegleville Elementary to this point? And what I would tell you is that not unlike many schools in the state of Texas, we have a deficit in funding. This chart does a good job of highlighting the Texas basic allotment since 2006, and you can see about every 4 years there's been a step up until we hit 2020, and they flatlined funding. At the same time, we were experiencing significant inflationary pressures in our country. In the last session, they put $55 additional on the basic allotment, and I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But to put that in perspective, from 2020 to 2026, we've seen a 219% increase in security services, 129% increase in fuel cost, 213% increase in property casualty insurance, and we've been underfunded in special education to over $10.5 million. And so while some of the funds that, it may appear as though we received money in the last session, we actually did not. Nothing appreciable. So what about the 89th legislative session and funding? The district received $4.28 million in new revenue, and I'll put that in quotation marks for a reason. $2.1 million of that was passed through. It was straight teacher retention allotment money. You will remember that teachers at certain levels of experience got $5,000, and other teachers got $2,500, and that was differentiated based on district size, I might add. That did not cover all of our teachers, and it certainly did not cover all of our staff. And so then we matched that $2.1 million in teacher retention allotment with a $1.3 million increase in compensation for those excluded from the TRA. This included our 0 to 2 year teachers, nurses, counselors, librarians, and all of our paraprofessionals and auxiliary employees. We had to find $400,000 to deal with the increase to TRS contributions created by the salary increase that came along with the TRA. That was an unfunded mandate. We are required to pay certain contribution to TRS, and so when they the state artificially pushed up those salaries. It pushed up those contributions without funding to go with it. So when I tell you the $55 basic allotment yielded us some money, understand it was completely swallowed up by that alone. We also lost $256,417 to the golden penny yield. This district passed a VADER 2 years ago with the belief that the golden penny would increase over time. They rewrote the laws on the golden penny, and we actually lost money compared to what we would have received had they not make that law rewrite. So of the $428 million of new revenue, we actually had $223,583 for what I put in air quotes as discretionary use. I mentioned before that was more than swallowed up by inflationary pressures, and so we started this school year with a $3.5 million budget deficit. We're currently projected to be in a deficit of $2.8 million. We have received additional information. One of the things that we've shared consistently is that our plan has been to monitor data, including enrollment trends and finances. Based on the 2025 comptroller values released on 1/31 of 26, so very recently, the district's hold harmless amount for the decrease in the frozen levy may lead to an increase in the district's M&O revenue. This is a developing conversation, and we hope to have more clarity in March. What I can tell you is we have reason to believe that we're going to get some more money in the M&O budget, but it is too early to tell exactly what that amount might be. But that is an ongoing situation that we continue to monitor. The state told us to expect new money in special education funding during the session. We have been told very recently by the state that we should expect not to receive any additional special education funding in the second year of the biennium. We do receive an additional $1,000 for every evaluation that we do for students who want to be tested for special education services. We've seen a spike in that recently due to the opening of the voucher portal, and the $1,000 contribution is already running behind what it's costing us to provide those assessments, and so we're actually losing money on that proposition as we speak. So I want to talk a little bit about the Speegleville facility itself and some of the challenges associated therewith. So we have challenges with finances. That's not new. That's been the case since I got here 3 years ago. But there are some unique challenges with the Speegleville School itself that really started to become part of the discussion when we went through the Facilities Study Committee. And so here are some of the topics I'm going to begin to move through as I talk through several of the next slides. So Speegleville opened in 1954. The raw cost to replace the building is $19 million, and it has more than $4 million of need. Included in that is all the plumbing and all the wiring and a number of the things that are inside the walls that we would not replace until they actually went end of life. But still, it is one of two that was rated poor condition on the rating, and it has capacity limitations because there's no water, wastewater. It is on an old school leach field septic system, for example. And so it is limited in terms of what it can take on in terms of enrollment. It's not in an area where we're currently experiencing growth. There's projected growth in that area, but we've not seen that start to happen yet. And it is not practical to assist the district with overflow students or transfers because of its location. Enrollment trends. In 2020, there were 293 students in the building, and as of snapshot this year, there were 221 students attending that school. Our projected enrollment for next year is 218 kids or so. And so it continues to decline in enrollment. It may be worth noting that in 2020, that's the year we added 5th grade to our elementary campuses. Operational efficiency. It cost us $9,220 to educate a student at Speegleville Elementary compared to other schools. You can see the cost up there. The next closest to it are Chapel Park and Hewitt. And a large portion of that is because of the number of staff that you have to run a building, and that cost spread over the enrollment of the students. So every time we lose a student out there, that operational inefficiency, that gap widens. There are some other issues with just teaching. In fact, Ms. Gomez mentioned some of them earlier. STAR scores move more dramatically at Speegleville because the way one or two children can have an impact on the way STAR ratings are accounted, especially when you look at disaggregated populations. It can create significant skews. And one of the concerns I have is that it affects the credibility of a school, which will have grades that will kind of move up and down more dramatically compared to some of our other campuses because 1, 2, or 3 kids can have a significant impact. It also puts a significant kind of burden on the staff because they know just 1, 2, or 3 kids can have a disproportionate impact on the way the percentages work, right? Due to a small student population, we have 1 or 2 teachers per grade level for self-contained classes. Grades 3 through 5 have 1 teacher per subject. It makes it difficult to have PLC planning times. It requires district coaches and content coordinators to do more collaboration. They're not specifically assigned to that campus. When a teacher is absent, especially for a significant period of time, you lose a disproportionate amount of expertise. And so you have staff doing quite a bit of planning in isolation, and that's just not the case on many of our campuses because they have staffs large enough to share the burden of the thinking, if not the doing. We have full-time employees out there, the principal, the assistant principal, the counselor, the librarian. Equity was mentioned earlier. I actually share that concern. We have full-time principal at a campus with 221 students. I have a full-time principal at a campus with right in the neighborhood of 700. And so we have to think about the resource allocation and how that plays out across the district as we think about proportionality and equity. Resource limitations exist because campus budgets are based on enrollment. Not all resources are available every day because of scheduling services and the availability of district to get out there. And then we have certain student populations that are smaller and have less opportunity to collaborate, especially collaborate in groups that are meaningful enough to create the level of collaboration that we see on some of our campuses that have more traditional enrollment sizes. There's hidden cost associated with special education services at Speegleville. We contract with many of the folks who provide some of these services, and we contract with them for time and mileage. Because of their remote location, it takes more time to get there and more time to return back. And so we're paying for that additional time. And that's time that's being paid for that's not in front of a student. That's just driving. Same thing with mileage. And then they end up having to share resources across different campuses because Speegleville doesn't justify these things full-time in and of themselves. And then recent changes to dyslexia services and House Bill 2 mean that we're going to need to use the existing staff we have more efficiently. I mentioned earlier that we continue to be underfunded in special education. It's putting quite a bit of pressure on that department. And so we plan to centralize service and reduce specialist travel by moving students who require multiple services to other campuses. So as we project forward into next year, should Speegleville stay open, we're going to be pulling kids off that campus and putting them in other locations so we can make sure they get the services they need, which will pull that enrollment down even further. The way in which that would not happen is if parents just refuse to receive special education services. That brings on a challenge of its own. So the current enrollment is 221, special education students is 46. Our projected for 226, 227 would reduce the total number of special education students to 38. We'd be moving 14 of those off campus and leaving 24 on campus. And that is to deal with some of the funding pressures we're feeling in special education and our need to centralize services because of that issue. And then, so let's talk about some potential scenarios. If we were to close the school, what would that look like? There are 218 students, and based on these planning numbers, and this all says projected because these are planning numbers. We'll know like what the real numbers are as we move forward. They kind of move every day. But 180 of those students would move to South Bosque Elementary, and 110 would go to Woodway. We have 35 staff out there. That is everybody except for the kitchen staff. And 7 would go to South Bosque to support the students that are going to that campus. 6 would go to Woodway. And then we have 22 other staff and other teachers that would be redistributed into open positions as they become available across the district. That would save the district $1.277, about $1.3 million in personnel cost. Here's what transportation would look like based on our scenarios. The students are up there. I think what's most interesting is to be aware that Speegleville students currently ride the bus for about 20 to 35 minutes. Earliest route picks up about 6:30. If we ended up doing this, our earliest routes would pick up as early as 6, and some riders would be on the bus a little over an hour. I would point out Woodway Route 1 and 2, an hour and 3 minutes, and an hour and 7 minutes is what our projection is. I've been working on those a little. I've asked Ken Wolf, our Director of Transportation, to work on that a little bit and look at what would happen if we had like dedicated routes to try and pull that time down a little bit. And so we continue to try and pull those times down. But right now, this is the scenario that we think we'd want the board to be fully aware of as they contemplate what's next. Current attendance zones, the orange is Speegleville, the kind of purple-pink color is South Bosque, and the green is Woodway. And then on the right-hand side of that slide, that's kind of a blow-up of the Speegleville attendance zone. If we were to look at closing the campus, this is what those new attendance zones would look like. They are split the way they are split to accommodate the appropriate number of students in each of the 2 elementary schools that we have space available in that are close by, and also kind of look at the Speegleville Road and Highway 6 corridors as the major transportation, major roads to those areas. So what would that look like moving forward? We're projecting South Bosque to have an enrollment of 484 next year. They have a capacity of 600. If Speegleville were to close, South Bosque's projected enrollment would be 592. Woodway has a projected enrollment of 494, capacity of 640, and this would put them up around 604. Projected cost savings, we actually think we would add $90,000 in cost because of additional fuel, 2 additional routes and drivers to go with that, plus maintenance. And so if you take our staff savings at 1.3, rounding up 1.3 million, 58,000 in building utility savings, and then you consider what you would lose in transportation cost, we project it being able to save somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3 million dollars if we close the building. Other considerations, there are significant infrastructure projects up and down Speegleville Road and along the Twin Bridges. I think that's important for the board to be thinking about. We've tried to ask questions and get specific answers. It is difficult to get super specific answers when projects have not been awarded yet. And so this is the best we've been able to get. So the Speegleville Road Bridge improvements, we expect fall, winter of 26. I do expect there to be a heavy traffic impact. They tell us that there shouldn't be road closures. If they are, they would be minimal. It'd be more about moving down to 1 lane instead of 2 and doing some of the, I don't know the exact technical term, but like where you have cars stop, you let some pass through and then you let them go, that kind of deal. And then some other just rerouting where they go down to 1 lane. They're also doing Twin Bridges improvements right now. If you've been up there lately, you've seen all that work. They expect all the traffic to be moved to the northbound bridge with 1 lane in each direction, summer of 26. Fall of 27, that traffic will move to the new southbound bridge, 2 lanes in each direction, and then 28, the project complete with everything moving forward and done. And then they're currently working on the Speegleville lift station. If you tried to drive a River Valley or Speegleville lately and you've been coming from 84 to do so, you know that we're currently in a reroute. That has started now with some work being done around a retention pond and some pipes. And there's about a year for completion to get that done. And then once they get past that, they expect limited traffic impact, if any, once they get some of that work in that area done. They still need to do some work actually at the intersection of Oak. Right now, they're kind of between Kings Row and Oak. And so we expect some more work in that area. But those are the most significant infrastructure projects. There's a lot going on out there. They're going to be actually doing some easement work right in front of River Valley Middle here in the next several months. But these are the things that we think are likely to have the biggest impact on traffic, which we're going to have to manage for high school and middle school students no matter what. So we're formulating a game plan on this no matter what happens next. But I think it would be wrong if we didn't make that part of the thinking process. And then we have worked hard to try and do some things for Speegleville Elementary School over time. So in 2020 and 2021 school year, when that building had 290 students in it, they added a full-time behavior coach. You know, not on the slide, but I think worth noting is that the building had a complete interior redo in 2011 after a fire. And we actually started, it's funny, I was talking to some folks about this today, going back in history. We actually started the one-to-one initiative in this district at Speegleville Elementary School. When we talk about innovation, support, and trying to take a little campus and kind of make it the crown jewel of the district, we actually tried to do that in 2010. I was here for that. I left and then Becky hopped in and took over. But, you know, we did that work. And then, like I said, we added a full-time behavior coach in 2021. And then since February 1 of 2023, why that date? That was my first day here. So the rest is I was here for. When the building had 260-ish or so students, we added a full-time assistant principal. We added a full-time campus safety and security specialist. We made the music, art teacher and librarian full-time. This allowed all specials teachers except the PE teacher to support intervention. We renovated the playground. At the same time, we did the renovations for our other elementary campuses out of unexpended bond funds from the last bond program. And these supports have remained in place even as the enrollment has dropped down to 218 students. And so there's been a lot to try and make sure that these students are not left behind. I wasn't sure whether to call this slide supports or who to blame. I'm to blame to some degree for this disproportionate cost, the $9,000 per student, because we've done everything we think we can to try and provide the campus what it needs to be an attractive campus. The challenge is we continue to lose enrollment. This isn't particularly comforting, but I do think it's worth context. We are not the only ones in the state struggling with this. This is just a snippet of headlines that anyone can go online and find where schools all across the state of Texas are closing. In fact, the very top Texas school districts across the state moved to close campuses because of budget deficits and declining enrollment. We're in that same bucket. Our enrollment has actually gone down since I've been here for various and sundry reasons. At the same time, we're facing significant budget challenges. There is not a place, a central hub, where anyone counts all of the school closures. But I went online and I just did a quick count. And in the last year and a half, I can tell you that a low ball estimate is more than 75 campuses across the state of Texas. And I think people would be surprised to know some of them. Like you might expect larger districts like Austin and Dallas and Fort Worth. You might be surprised to hear that Leander and McKinney are closing campuses. Eanes closed an elementary school. Of all places, Eanes, it's one of the wealthiest school districts in the state of Texas. They had to close a campus. And so it's affecting a number of different campuses all over the state, districts all over the state, as they try and consider how to address some of the challenges. I get an email every day that kind of gives me statewide headlines. And y'all, it's a different district, a different number of campuses almost daily that are confronting these challenges. So I've shared with you a bunch of data. I want to talk for just a minute about what the data can't capture. You know, when you're talking about closing a school campus, especially one that's been in place since 1954, there are a lot of numbers that are important. And a school administration and a school board has a responsibility to all students. And what I've been talking to this point is the 218 students at Speegleville. We have over 8,600 other students who could benefit from that $1.2 million. So no matter what decision's made, there are going to be students who are affected. But we don't ask teachers to think about the work that they do in the same way that other industries do. We don't ask them to simply show up and do a job and go home. We ask them to care very deeply for the kids they serve. And we ask them to connect to their communities. They have goals in their campus improvement plans that hold them accountable for the way in which they build relationships with the communities and with the kids. We don't ask teachers to come to work and work in isolation. We ask them to invest deeply in one another. Certainly professionally in terms of getting the work done, but the best mental support for a teacher when he or she's having a rough day is another teacher. They build tight-knit teams, and over time, some of them take on aspects of family. And data can't capture that. There's not a number I can give to you that would describe that. There is an absolute nuts and bolts, hard number set of facts that we have to think about. But I think it would be disrespectful to the people who do the hard work we ask them to do every day to not acknowledge the fact that this is a human endeavor. And we have to make tough decisions, like every school district has to make tough decisions. But I think it's worth taking a moment of pause to just reflect on what it means to have a building that's been in place since 1954 and how that creates a sense of place for students and for families and for teachers. I was thinking about this today. I didn't write anything down, but just off the top of my head, like 1954, this building was around when we fought Vietnam and when we fought Korea and when we fought the Cold War. The Berlin Wall went up and came down during the time that this building has been sitting there. 1954 is the same year that the Supreme Court heard Brown versus Board of Education. This building was around when Wilt scored 100, when Mike scored 63, and when Kobe scored 81. It was around when RFK and MLK were shot. It was around when we put a man on the moon. It was here during 9/11 attacks in New York. This building has been around for almost every major marker, whether it be athletics or pop culture or significant historical events, for most people alive today. My dad, who's 76 years old, was born in 1948. And so for most of us, if we think back over the biggest markers in our life, this building has stood in testament to that. I don't say that because I think it should be a reason not to do what needs to be done for the schools and for Midway. Innovation means change. But I do think it is a way of just stopping to take pause for a moment and recognize that there are no easy decisions when you're trying to think about what's best for kids and for a community, and that it's worth just a little bit of pause to recognize the heart that's involved in this kind of work that is very difficult to capture with data and throw on a slide in front of some decision makers who need to try and figure out what's best for today and moving forward. So with that, I'd entertain any questions you have.
So what's your recommendation?
Yeah.
Right.
Here's what I would recommend. I don't think that it is fair to look at doing anything with Speegleville Elementary that we don't recognize should be part of the same decision-making metrics for any other campus we have over the next several years. I think that there's very little reason to believe that that building and that location on that piece of property with this infrastructure is part of the future of Midway ISD. I think we should close the campus. But I think in doing so, we should know that that means that if we have to redraw attendance zones for other elementary schools in the coming years to move more kids to Hewitt or more kids to Spring Valley or more kids to Castleman, that we should think about that with the same level of dogged efficiency. I think it means that if we have to consider other programs that we have in the district, programs that are meaningful and important, when it comes time to face those decisions, we should face them with the same amount of dogged focus on doing what's right for kids, all kids, while understanding that we have to be thoughtful about efficiency. I don't see a solution to the problem. I don't see us getting more funding from the state. I don't see that this is going to be an issue that solves itself anytime soon. I do believe we will have another campus in Speegleville one day. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. Mr. Tullis, you mentioned earlier that we've seen significant and meaningful growth the last 4 years in McLennan County. And yet all these projected houses or housing developments have not produced a house that has caused our enrollment to increase. We are in a place where we're dealing with something we've not had to deal with here before. We've always been the fast-growing district. We're now contracting. And so if we're going to build when we're growing, then we have to deal with contraction when we're not. And so my recommendation would be reluctantly that we close it, but that we know that by doing so, we have to be thoughtful about what this means for every other thing we do in the district from this point moving forward.
I know this isn't a question, you won't have an answer to this, but I mean, have you considered some of those students may choose not to stick with our district, may take other alternatives that are now available to them. So it's not even guaranteed that all those students would end up
Yes.
staying with us, yeah.
We've calculated that into the potential scenarios.
Yeah.
At the same time, I would point out too that if we don't close it, a lot of the students might also take advantage of those opportunities to go
Sure.
somewhere else as well.
Sure.
So I think that's, yeah. What, am I correct, Ms. Board President, that we are not noticed for action on this today? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This is just for discussion, for information, for the public. We want to put the effort so we can discuss this together as a group in an open meeting, because as time has gone on and we've gone back and forth on this, and then the enrollment started going down, so we did not put in the budget to build a new elementary school because the student numbers aren't there, right? So, and then our budgets just keep being slashed and everything's happening. It just seemed to bring this more to the focus. It felt like it was time that we needed to really seriously talk about Speegleville. We've talked about it before, but all of us just wanted to keep it going, right? We just weren't ready. And I'm not saying we're all ready, I don't know, but we need to talk about it because of the future and because of these kids and because of the uncertainty these families feel because of the up and downs we've had the last couple of years. And I feel that, and I know how hard that is. You want a decision, whether it's what you want or you don't want, you want to know what's your future. And so I think it's important to discuss it. And I think I hate the thought of closing a school, but everything, runs its course at some point. And, we closed the old high school and built a new one. So these things happen, but I think it's important to discuss it. And if at the end of this discussion, we can have a called meeting to do a vote on it, or we could wait to the next board meeting to vote on it. But tonight is discussion, and so I think we really need to be honest with ourselves and each other and ask him more questions and talk about it so we can get a feel for what the board would like to do.
Well, that's why I asked, just to make sure everybody here knew that
Yes.
there's not the way our agendas work and the Texas open meeting laws work, we can't take action if we don't have it on our agenda to
Correct.
potentially take action.
Correct.
And I do think that, all of the teachers, all of the students, all of the families that live there, the thing they deserve more than anything else is clarity on this really soon. And so I think hopefully we can have the conversation here and ask the questions and make a decision. I would favor before our next March meeting, but, because I know that every day that we move that decision up makes it easier on the staff, makes it easier on the families, makes it easier on everyone to know what's coming.
The board
So-
can always direct administration to schedule a special called meeting.
Sure, absolutely.
Within the laws around timelines and all that.
Yeah.
We can-
And I've also mentioned that if we do decide to close Speegleville, I think it's important to do it with enough time that we can honor and celebrate Speegleville before the end. If we were to do it now, before the end of the year, before that happens, we need enough time to put together those opportunities for everybody to come together and celebrate and remember the school that was there. And so that might be another reason to be more timely if we wanted to have another meeting. But tonight is just discussion. I mean, we need to kind of know how everybody is feeling on this issue to move forward.
My question about Alan, you talked about attendance zones and changes. Are we comfortable with the idea that this change is absorbed fully by Woodway and South Bosque, and there's not any other redrawings or things to balance? I mean, are we comfortable that those two campuses can handle? sort of
Based on our
load
current
if we did that?
projections, we are actually more than comfortable with
Now, I know the
that.
numbers are under, but I also know that when you get to that 95%, it starts to feel full, so.
We have space to absorb those students. Each of those buildings have had more students than that in them in the past, and we're able to operate at high levels and get good student learning outcomes from young people. And so, yes, sir, to answer your question briefly. If we were to start to go back into a growth curve, then we'd have to come back and look at that. But that is not the case, and hasn't been for some time.
The issue that concerns me is the long bus ride for the students, so I'm glad y'all are trying to look into it and see if we can come up with another alternative, since it's going to cost us more money to do this with transportation.
Yes.
It would, in my opinion, might be okay to spend a little bit more to try to do it a little better for those little kids, so they're not on the bus as long as an hour if it's possible.
We're
It may not
working
be
on that
possible, but-
and looking at some scenarios. To your point, the amount of money we're saving, we're willing to spend quite a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, it is a long run out to some of the places we have students, and we're trying to get it under an hour. To get it appreciabely under an hour is probably not realistic.
No, and some
That
of the
just has
kids
to be
are,
factored
right,
into the
and
decision.
the older kids are used to doing that to go to the
Yes.
middle school or the high school, but, so it's.
It's hard on
some
the
families
youngest
are used
students.
to it, yes. But, does anybody else have any thoughts, questions? Some general,
One of the hardest things I've learned in this seat, but it's incredibly been helpful, is the more complex a matter, the more critical it is that we hear about it from multiple points of view. And one thing that I think has become clear over the last 6 or 7 months is that this is a community that has felt unheard. I will admit there were some things I had not heard. There were some things that I did not know. And one of the most helpful things that's come out of the last several months is having an opportunity to listen to some stories, to hear what this means, to hear what the experience on that campus has been like. We've done that in public meetings. We've done that through emails we've received. I've done a one-on-one conversation. You've given us lots of information to digest. Would it be possible to let Mandy Bronstead come and give some thoughts about what this has been like for her and hear it from that point of view? Are we allowed to do that?
You are ask any member of staff to come speak to you, which you're certainly allowed to do.
We would, we would need to do that at a special, I mean, she's not here, special called meeting, or, she is here, I don't have my glasses on. I don't know if she wants to be called up to the front at the moment.
I don't want to
That's-
put Mandy on the spot, but
well,
I
this-
want to give her the opportunity if
This is
there's
the
some
time.
things she would like to say.
It's up, I mean, you've been invited.
Good evening, board. I'm going to try not to get emotional. I was thinking if I were up here, what would I say, and listening to everything. And I don't think there's one person in our building or a parent that has seen the numbers that doesn't understand the numbers and the facts of what Dr. Allen so eloquently explained. I understand the decision that's being put before you, and that it's a hard decision, and why we are having to make that decision. In that same aspect, this is my 7th year there, and I love that campus, and I love those kids, and families and staff. And so even though I understand it all, that doesn't change the feelings that we all have, and I know you understand that. My biggest thing is really, honestly, and please don't throw anything at me at work tomorrow, is not what decision you make. It's not whether you decide to close Speegleville or not, because again, we all understand the numbers and the position that you've been put in. The biggest thing on my heart is that the decision is made sooner rather than later. I have watched the morale and feelings of staff go up and down all year long, and there's not anything anybody could have done about that. I tried my best, and I can't. I mean, there's just not. I understand that, but it's been hard to watch for families that know. It's been hard to watch and to not really be able to do anything to help them. And I think that the longer that this lingers on, just continues. And I would not want to be sitting in your shoes, in your seat. I am very thankful for all the thoughtfulness that you have put into this decision and the conversations that you've had. I so appreciate that. And again, I'm thankful that it's not my decision. And I don't know what the rules are about calling a special called board meeting or anything like that. But I do think that it has been an emotional year. And we are nearing the time in education where people, even though Midway has said, like, we're going to need teachers, we will find jobs for you. This is the time of year when staff start to get scared about that, because right now there is still unknown, even if people say there is a position for you. You don't know where, you don't know what it's going to be. If you are a staff member that has kids at the campus, you don't know if you're going to end up at one campus and now your kids are going to end up at another one. There's just all kinds of things that are going through their minds. I have shared this with them. My children are grown. I don't have to worry about those things. But I ask you to just be mindful of that, all of the uncertainty that families and staff are experiencing. I I guess, a blessing of younger students is they don't really understand or know. And so, whereas if we were talking about a middle school or high school, they might understand a little bit more or know more. So I can't say that I've seen that in the kiddos, but definitely in the staff and some families. And so that would be my ask of you tonight. It's really not whether we're opened or closed. While I work at Speegleville, I definitely want the best for every student in the district. I used to work at the middle school, and I loved my time there, and I loved those kids and staff, and I don't think you could find any Midway staff member that wouldn't want the best for every kid and family and staff member in the district. So thank you for asking and for listening.
So one of the things I like about the plan is that we will have some staff going to Woodway and some staff going to South Bosque. So a lot of the kids will have someone, they should probably have someone they're familiar with at one of those schools. So it won't just be all teachers perhaps they don't recognize, you know what I'm saying? It depends on their age. But I think that's a positive. In the
You feel
plan.
pretty confident, though, that 35 teachers and staff, and even the cafeteria, say the food service staff, that we will be able to find a place for them if they want to stay at Midway?
So what I would tell you is the answer to that is yes. Even if we have to run heavy for a year, I view this as a potential 2-year phase-in if required. We have turned over about 120 to 150 staff every year since I've been here. If we turned over half of that, we'd be able to accommodate all the changes we're trying to make in the district. But even when I was talking about the middle school changes, I said, y'all, if we have to phase this in over 2 years to accomplish the full savings, if that's the cost of treating people well, that's what we'll do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's important, for sure, is
Yep.
making sure, like they've said, the staff is taken care of.
Well,
Just as
and to
much
that
as the students
point,
are. I mean,
we have
they're
frozen
right there.
all, I'm sorry. Go
No, they're
ahead.
right ahead.
We've frozen all hiring in the district. No one's allowed to fill a position until we make sure that all of the folks who are looking for positions internally are cared for. And we're actually delaying our contract recommendations from March to April this year to give us more time to do all of that.
So every teacher in the district wants this resolved, is what you're saying?
Well,
It's true. Yeah.
what I would say is this. We're talking about Speegleville, but everyone has a piece of this. We are 11 campuses, but we are one district.
Well, I hate that we've been put in this spot. And I hope people understand the spot that Texas public education is being put in. I mean, we just saw that, and I hope they remember that when they go to the ballot box. Because these are kids. This is the future of this state, and we're not taking care of them.
Early voting for the primaries started today. And the primaries are where elections are won and lost in the state of Texas.
It brings up a good point that I'd like to underscore, because I've been hearing it, and Mandy, you said it very well. Your community, this community, is in a state of uncertainty, and the degree to which that has been agonizing, I feel it, and I'm sorry. This may be common across the state. It's never happened in the history of Midway. We've closed a campus to build a new one, but we have never had to shut down a school. And so I'm sorry if it feels like it's been drug out. On our end, we wanted to be thoughtful and deliberate and have as much information as we possibly could, while also being reluctant to do something that we don't want to do. So I'm sorry for the helplessness and uncertainty you may have felt because there's a decision that's up in the air that you're not in charge of. That said, circling back to what Dr. Allen and Mr. Berry said, The agency that we all have is to go to the ballot box and let our state leaders know what we want for the future of public education. It's never been more critical. The numbers we're looking at now are not going to get better until we tell our leaders that we deserve more. So if that helps the people in this community feel more empowered, I hope that's something that you will leave and think on. There is actually something you can do to take ownership of what's going on in our district. Thank you.
And not to belabor the point that Pam and Jordan just made, but what I'll say to Ms. Gomez and Ms. Bronstad, speaking for me personally, I was hopeful, probably naive, but I was hopeful that the legislature would give us the resources we needed to keep Speegleville open. That was my hope, that was my wish. And so I think that plays into what Pam said, that I think that's what dragged this on as long as it has. I really, really wanted to keep Speegleville open. And not saying that a decision's been made, don't want to speak like it has been, but that has always been my desire, was to keep Speegleville open. But, you know, based on the numbers that Dr. Allen shared and just kind of the circumstances and the state of public education in the state, and the fact that our legislators think that private school kids are worth $10,000 and public school kids are worth $6,000 and change, it's just making it really tough, and I hate that. And, you know, we are put in a tough spot, and I don't like it, but, you know, we've got to do what's best for 8,800 kids, and it sucks that there's going to be 218 that are going to be impacted more than the other 8,600 if it was to close. But I would also say my preference, like Mr. Witt said, that we have a special call meeting to get a decision on the books sooner than later. There's no sense in dragging this out of respect for everybody at Speegleville, kids and staff, families, everybody. So
I agree as well.
You know, I'll say this too. I mean, I don't disagree with what the three of you have just said about the problems at the state level and funding and everything else. I mean, that is clearly the elephant in the room here. But I mean, I even look at, you know, if we had another $200 or $300 or $400 in the basic allotment that we don't have now, we would still be facing a building that needs $4.3 million of updates, that will never have the kind of water and sewer support that we need to really grow that campus, to make that a place. I think it's still a huge lift to make that campus the kind of campus that we want to say, this is a Midway campus, and that those kids are, I mean, I've visited most of our campuses, been there, you know, been in classes to read. I roller skated at Speegleville a few years ago. It was a lot of fun. I didn't fall down, that anybody knows. But I just think, I think it's a huge driver for this is the funding problem. But I think there are issues that this board probably should have looked at and addressed years back. I appreciate that what we've done, the work we've done, and that Jordan's group did as well with the facilities. I think we're going to make big progress in the district. I think it was a huge lift to do that in the way that respects the staff and the students that are there, and says, you know, we value you as much as everyone else, you know, in the district. So I think even from that perspective, if we had the funding to keep kicking the can down the road, I still don't think that we are close enough to where that needs to be. Does that make sense?
The challenge is a building that's designed for the building can hold up to about 275, almost 300. And in the world of this funding, it's not tenable.
Right. And we couldn't add on to it, is my point. We couldn't upgrade it. Right. So it's not a facility that's amenable to growth like that. We need a different solution.
When I was here the first time, we built Castleman Creek. That was a 600 student building. Park Hill was built at 750. Mm-hmm. This is the impact of reduced funding on the state. We're seeing buildings everywhere, bigger buildings everywhere, because they tend to be more efficient.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I just think that I guess what I'm trying to say is the worst thing that we could do is nothing, and try to continue on as is. That we either need a large commitment, a large lift to bring that campus where it needs to be, or We need to understand the best thing for those students and that staff is to be in an environment where they can succeed, like everyone else in the district can.
Well, and that first
And
scenario
they've
is
done
not
remarkably
even
well.
possible
Yeah, I mean,
with
they've
the
done
latter.
remarkably well, right? It's an A-rated campus this last year, right?
No, sir, but
It's a
they went
B,
from
but
an
they
80
moved.
to an 88.
Right, they moved up.
Yes,
which
sir.
is-
Dramatic.
Which is considerable,
Yes, sir.
so.
I like everybody's comments. I think they're very helpful and forthright. The only other thought I have is alluding to what he said, I think someday there'll be a new elementary school out on that part of town. And rightfully so, we've held this off for many years because of enrollment growing. We kept thinking it would get big enough, we would build a new school. And then boom, enrollment's going down. So I still think that's in the future, but my other positive of the fact that enrollment is down, and I don't think it's going to be up anytime soon for us to build a new school out there, is that the children that are moved to a new school will finish out their elementary careers at that school. Because several years ago, we were afraid with the way the growth was going, if we did close Speegleville, the students might be at Woodway for 2 years, and then the new school would be built, and they'd be moved again, and that's even harder. And so that was one of the reasons we kept putting it off. But I feel more at peace now knowing that the students will, 99% sure they will stay at the campus they are sent to till they finish elementary school, and before we have the bond passed and the money and everything in place and enough students to fill a new elementary school. So it still doesn't make it easy by any means, but I'm definitely more at peace with the decision myself. So the only person we haven't heard from is Brad, if you have anything you'd like to say.
I was going to
Okay.
ask Chris about the timeline, if enrollment changed, how long that would be, but you've answered that, so
Okay.
I agree.
Is that about-
In your attendance zone shifts.
Yes, sir.
That you showed up there earlier, was there any other changes to current attendance zones?
No, sir, just the division of Speegleville.
Okay.
But on that thought, if the district does start growing in other parts of the district somehow that, well, anyway, not other parts, but if some neighborhoods start to grow, say in South Bosque, and the numbers start to get big, we might have to shift some of the other parts of the district zoning to move kids so that the Speegleville kids are still at the schools they're in, and some other students might have to be moved. But that is, of course, down the line. We don't know if or when that would even
Right now,
happen.
we're contracting.
Yeah, so,
Something I would want to consider going forward, and we've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months even talking about, I want to choose my words carefully, but some of the things that makes it hard for Speegleville to be Speegleville, it's geographically remote from the rest of the district. It's small because we can't make it any bigger because the infrastructure is limited. It's disproportionately expensive to run. It's certainly received a disproportionate amount of care on the facility, I think, relative to the other campuses. And we spent a lot of time focusing on that, and those are important things. But whatever we do going forward, I want to make sure we are very purposeful about honoring and celebrating the good things that make it so special, and to hold on to that and remember all of the good things that come out of that campus and this community. Like I said, the things we piloted out there, because we could start small. But I can't tell your story for you, but I'm determined to honor that part of the Speegleville story going forward and celebrate what makes it special. I hope that makes sense.
yeah, and we will do that, definitely. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts?
So are we recommending to get this on an
If
agenda
you're-
as soon
yes.
as we can?
Yes,
for a
if everybody,
special
I just
call?
want to make sure everybody was through speaking. Okay. I would like to ask the superintendent to please call a special called board meeting before spring break.
So you'll hear from our office, and we'll start working with you to schedule something as fast as the laws allow.
Correct.
The earliest we'd be able to meet is middle of the week next week.
Okay.
Because of posting rules and where we are on timeline this week. So we'll get it on there as quickly as we can at the, after tonight. And your schedules allow. Those are the
Yes.
two things we got to line up.
I won't be here next week.
And it has to be a night meeting, did you say that?
Yes, ma'am, there's recent change in legislation where
Okay,
meetings
so
have
we
to be
can't do it
outside
at
of work
lunch now.
hours.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure that we do that. I think it's important we do it, that we do it in here, that it's online
Yes, sir.
for people to watch, if people are not able to
Absolutely.
come and speak. I mean, yeah.
Well, it has to be at an open meeting.
Yeah,
of course.
which, yeah.
All right, I want to thank Dr. Allen for this a very good presentation, for your thoughts, for your compassion, your care for Speegleville, how hard you've worked with us to give us all the information, all the data, all the facts, and we work with the staff and the students out there, and you care, and our whole staff cares. And thank you for doing such a good job with this hard problem, decision, issue.
Thank you, Ms. Vick.
We love it. It's not a problem. That was wrong. But thank you. Okay. All right. After that, we have middle of the year progress monitoring data. Dr. Odajima. Y'all, my allergies are messing with my brain.
All right, well, good evening again. We have middle of the year progress data to share with you. Tonight there are 2 assessments, primarily, actually 3, that we'll share with you. We have not finished our benchmark assessments, which we shared this time last year. We were a little bit further down the line with those because we did this presentation in March. And then our unit test is not something that we routinely do, but we have beginning, middle, and end of year assessments that we do. MAP is what we use for reading language arts. Tango Lion is what we use for math assessment. And then IXL we use for both reading and math in our middle grades, and then in high school grades as well for reading and math. The benchmark assessments we'll talk about at the end there, and then unit tests are those ongoing assessments at the end of each unit that we use to measure progress along the way. So tonight, starting with our reading assessments, we've got several years of using MAP, so we have some great data here. So the bar on the far right, the dark navy bar, is where we are today. So middle of the year is the winter section in the middle. You'll notice we're trending up in nearly every area, in every grade level. So this is kindergarten. One of the neat things here, I think, is that in kindergarten, in our middle of the year numbers, that 151.7, we are nearly at the national norm for the end of year. So that light blue bar on the far spring side, that is the national norm for kindergartners. So our kindergartners in the middle of the year are nearly at the national norm end of year for everybody else. So I think that's outstanding. And you'll see that trend follow. Again, this is first grade on their MAP test. We're making significant gains. So we're outpacing ourselves from previous years, and we're at where the national norm ends up by end of year. So that looks great. Again, same kind of thing for second grade. Third grade, still pacing well above national norm, end of year, doing great there. So you see this trend follow. So we've been using MAP for some time, and we've seen growth. We had a rocky start, but it looks great from this point forward. So we're excited about the gains that we've seen in MAP scores. Our TIA has reflected that as well, because this is how teachers have designated for teacher incentive allotment in those early grades, K through fifth grade. This is IXL, and we just began using this as a beginning, middle, end of year screener in 6th through 8th grade for reading language arts this year. So the only data that we have right now to compare to is our own beginning to middle of year results. So you'll see that the students that are far below are about maintaining where they were. We've had a little bit of movement in and out. It doesn't look incredible when you look at it here, but what I think is important to look at, nationally normed-wise, 60% of our kids are performing above the national norm. So 50% line is where the country is performing, and 60% of our kids are above that line. So even though it doesn't look fantastic here, really, we're doing pretty well. And we're going to keep working through that. Again, this is our first time to use this screener, so our teachers and our students getting accustomed to this measurement is also something that we're working through. So that's IXL for reading. 7th grade, a little bit better response. The far below thing, we need to take this a little more seriously, so we're working on that too. But again, nationally normed, more than 50% of our kids are above the national norm. So we feel like we're heading in the right direction with this. We just need to make some adjustments as to how we use this assessment in middle of year. And then in 8th grade, we need some adjustments on how we use this. This is actually feeding into practice information that they use this program so that it feeds activities into a student's independent work on this platform. So if they don't do well on these assessments, it's going to feed them more remedial type practice. So they need to do well on these assessments in order for it to actually feed them the information that they need. So it'll ask them to practice grade level skills and then also give them reading prompts that would help them like fill in gaps. So it's important that they do perform at the level they actually can. So we're working on that to work through some of these kinks. Still, we're 50% of our students are performing above the grade level norm. Ninth grade, same kind of thing here. We're going to continue to work to use this as a great measure. I don't think we're taking it as seriously as we could, but still 59%, so we're significantly better than we were in 8th grade. So you can see we've got good performance numbers there. You'll see that 10th grade has dropped, but part of that is because if you look at the gray bar on the far right side, those are our students that are in AP seminar. So we scraped off the top performers in the class that are taking an AP class as sophomores. They didn't take this assessment because they were doing an AP assessment in place of it, or they were prepping for an AP exam. So still, with our top third of our students pulled out, still 42% of the rest of the class is performing above the national norm. Moving on to math, we're using Tango Lion in this math placement. So you'll see that our kindergarten students always perform really well. So if you look at the two far left columns, you have on track and off track as those two sets of columns. The pink is the current year. So we're doing well there. Still doing well in first grade. We're outperforming where we were last year. In second grade, we're making some strides. It's about where it was last year. We're outperforming the previous year's mark by about 3%, so that's great. Tango Lion is measuring more than the skills that they've been taught, but it's sort of in stride with the curriculum. You'll see that third grade goes down, but what I'll tell you is that they're making gains because, if I go backwards, in second grade, this group was also behind. So they were behind their previous cohort. They were at 31%. Well, now they've grown to 39% at this point in the year. So they are making strides. Even though they're a little bit behind their previous class cohort, they're still making gains. So we're on the right trajectory. Fourth grade looks great as far as middle of the year data is concerned, where they need to be at this point in time. Fifth grade was a surprise. This is not what our unit tests have shown us, so I don't know if we stumped them a little bit with this test or not, but we have a benchmark coming up on the 4th, I believe, of March, and so we'll have more data to back this up and see where we are, but this was a little bit off from the other tests that we've been collecting along the way. So we move into middle grades, we move to that IXL component. In IXL math, what you can see here is that with the national norm. In this case, they're performing 67% above the national norm at that 50 percentile mark and higher, and then the 2 percentiles next to that are 11% of our population, so we're doing well. In 7th grade, we have a large amount of students that look like they're far below. There's still 63% of our kids that are performing above the national norm. So we'll continue to work with those students and make sure we're taking this assessment as seriously as we need to, so it's feeding us the right information when we do the practice work and the progress monitoring and the platform. But overall, performing probably where we need to on that national normed piece as that's measured. This is 8th grade. It looks like half of the class is not performing where they should be. In 8th grade, this is also one of those places where we've got 56% of the class that's performing above the national norm, above the 50th percentile, but it is also a test that is not given to Algebra 1 students. So you've also taken off the top probably half of the 8th grade students that are sitting in Algebra 1, is probably more than half of the students, and then the remaining students that are in on grade level math are still performing well on the 8th grade math assessment. We do have upcoming benchmarks, which will give us a good indication of where we are. in our preparation for our state assessments. So you see here, every content area, every grade level has got some kind of benchmark coming up. So in addition to these middle of year tests, we also have benchmarks. There's quite a bit of assessing that happens at this stage in the game. So we can bring more data when those things have passed. We'll be doing lots of disaggregation with that data and making some individualized plans when that happens. We actually just had a data day, a district-wide data day on February 13th when we had the day off. We had a professional learning day, and our teachers took the data that we have to date and looked at it kid by kid to figure out what we need to do next for individual students. We'll continue to disaggregate that data as we get it and work with ongoing plans for individual needs and group needs, and then we'll make sure we're getting them the resources and things that they need. So, do you have questions about anything we're looking at right now?
Does anyone have any questions?
I'm noticing in some of our areas, especially on 8th, 9th, 10th grade reading, language arts, and third grade math, 6th grade math, that bump up in the testing far below numbers. Was that a surprise? Clearly you see it, you know it, you've got a plan going forward. It
Right.
just caught my attention. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to say about it.
Yeah, so this is the first time that we've used IXL for this screener, and we don't believe that we've taken it as seriously as we probably needed to.
What does
So-
that mean?
That means the students did not take as long on the assessment as they needed to, and they flew through the questions.
Okay.
So we don't believe we've got the most accurate data that we have. We believe they're performing much higher than what these tests indicate. So this is not the only measure we're using to figure out exactly where they are in their readiness and in their progress right now. But it is something that we are having discussions with teachers during PLC time about that. Because this platform is actually really helpful because it builds individualized lessons for students. So when students log in, dependent on how they've performed on this assessment, they have individualized lessons built for them. So if they'll do well on the assessment and it's a true indication of where they are academically, they'll have catered individualized lessons. Well, if they don't do well, it's going to give them stuff that they don't need, that they're past. So we've got to fix that, but this is our inaugural year of IXL for our middle grades. So we'll continue to work through those bumps. But good catch on that, because this is not acceptable data.
Well, we need measurements and we need data and we need to track student performance, but what I'm hearing you say is that this is a snapshot of student performance and it does not by any means tell the whole story.
That's right.
So maybe it's time to mention, this is also a time to have the conversation with our candidates running for office that we need to measure more than test scores, because there's going to be a lot of talk going forward about what STAR looks like and what that
Yes.
means for school accountability ratings. So
That's
if
right.
we're thinking about testing, that's a conversation we need to keep having with the people
Absolutely.
who make laws about testing. So I'm going to get
That's
that little
right.
plug in there if I can.
I love it.
And to that end, I mean, you talk about benchmarks, IXL, MEA, MAP, Tango, Lion, I know there's STAR, I know there's other things.
That's right.
Do we feel like these kids are kind of getting test overload? I mean, is this, I guess one of the questions is, do each of these different measures help us in a way that reinforces others or gives us a new look, that it's important we have 3 or 4 different ways to slice this, or should we maybe, is it easier to focus this down on just one set of benchmarks? Or what will make the most sense for the teachers and also the students to get their attention?
Yeah. So they measure different things. I mean, the unit assessment only measures what you've taught in that specific time, which is not what STAR does. It looks at the entire scope of the year. The benchmarks are very much like STAR. They look at the entire scope of the year to see if you're ready for that STAR test. When the rules roll out for the new STAR test, they're going to outlaw benchmark tests. So those are no longer going to be allowed. However, you can still assess based on the curriculum that you've taught at that time. So there'll probably be some way that those still happen. The screeners actually are supposed to assess your content knowledge at the time, not necessarily based on the curriculum. So you're looking for growth. So growth over time, not necessarily what you've been taught in the content, but are you growing cognitively over time? So they do test different things. So, you know, it matters what you're looking to measure, and they do measure different things. So for us, looking for cognitive growth, the MAP test will tell you that. IXL will tell you that to a certain extent. Tango Line measures more of your content knowledge. The benchmark is a pre-STAR. So it gives us a good read on whether or not you're going to master the TEKS and whether or not you're ready for that assessment, so that we know how better to prepare you before we get there. So that's why we do that at this stage, because we've taught the majority of the curriculum at this stage in the year. So we know that we can intervene in a way that a kid's still going to be successful when we get there. So I think they all serve different purposes. It is a lot of assessment.
Yeah. But if it's valid, I mean, that's good. And I understand the difference between the content and the cognitive, so that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Becky, how long do some of these tests take that they just did? I mean, is it really overwhelming to the kids? Is it like I know you say you think they went through it too fast, but is it supposed to be an hour test, an all-day test? The benchmarks that we've done.
The benchmarks take a bit longer.
Okay.
They're, Kim, like 90 minutes or so benchmark?
The benchmarks, we run those in RLA and math, just like a STAR base. So it's in relation to the Canvas for practice. We can practice administering. Science and social studies we do through the classrooms because they're much shorter exams. Your universal screeners, it depends on a student's proficiency, how long it takes them. The more proficient you are, the longer it takes. So it's a little bit different for every student. Math takes a lot of time.
They're adaptive, so you get a different number of questions based on what you're getting right and what you're getting wrong.
Well, I had some concerns as well, but I was glad you were able to explain them. I know it's the first time to the test. Maybe people didn't take it as seriously as they should. Also, the fact you could tell a difference in the second grade, how they performed in the third grade, because you look back to second grade. And then also the gray area. So I'm glad you can interpret the test better than I can, the results better than I can, and that, of course, I know you have means in place to help those kids improve and learn more, but you did enlighten, and your explanations were very helpful.
Great.
So thank you for that.
Excellent.
Anybody else? Okay.
We're still waiting our Stump Becky question.
Not tonight.
You're
doing great.
Not tonight. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question about it too? Are there other assessments that instead, I mean, does the TEA have stuff that aligns with STAR? Is that important? Is it, like, do we feel like these are the right assessments for us to give? I'm not advocating for more, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just, you talked about how when the new STAR stuff
So
comes out,
when
they're
the
gonna outlaw
SST, the
benchmark.
new STAR comes out, it won't just be the one test. They'll
Yeah,
write their
that's
own
three.
BOY and MOI.
Right.
So there'll be 2 other tests. They also are supposed to name some vendors that they would allow you to replace, and we suspect that one of our vendors might be one that's adopted.
Okay.
But on the table, as I understand it, as of now, our accountability ratings are still going to be based on the one test at the end of the year. So we are looking at having students take more tests, but still have only one count.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
So
I think it's
though-
misleading to parents.
If, though, they use one of the ones that we're currently using as our screener, if we're able to swap that out for the STAR beginning and middle of year, then our kids would actually be doing the exact same thing that they do right now. Only hopefully the STAR test at the end of the year would be shorter.
But my point being, the plan
We're
is
still
to collect
testing,
more
yeah.
data, but not
Right.
have it influence the outcome as far as district
Right.
accountability ratings. So we're
Right.
still being measured by one single snapshot on one day.
And not taking test stress off of the students.
Correct.
No, it didn't really help any testing, yeah,
Not at all.
yeah.
More tests, no impact.
Yeah.
So-
Sorry for the extra question.
You opened a can of worms. Thank you, Dr. Ojima. All right, CTE and CCMR annual report, Jess Wheeler. Thank you.
Good evening. Being that we're in the middle of livestock show season, I'm going to talk a little bit like an auctioneer. If I talk too quickly, don't hesitate to stop me. This presentation will have a little bit different flavor than it typically has. Usually I focus exclusively on CTE, provide a little bit of the CCMR components. We have historically been very, very successful with CCMR. I don't envision that being different moving forward, but TEA is in the process of significantly changing the game. And have kind of hampered our ability to do what we do. And so I want to make sure that we cover those and assess the plan that we have moving forward. And so, as I said, there are major changes. It will affect the class of 2027, so our current junior class, which will be accountability 2028. So, I mean, we're talking about years in advance, but we've got a plan now for those students to be accountable for it. So there are those three metrics. You have college readiness, career readiness, and military readiness. Obviously, if you go to the military, you enlist, you fill out a DD-4. The United States government provides that back to TEA, and it checks that box. From a college readiness perspective, all of our students take the TSI, that Texas Success Initiative, in both math and English. If they pass both of those, they are then CCMR. If they make take an AP course, 3 or better, they pass that, they're CCMR. If they take 9 hours of dual credit, or they pass 3 hours of math or 3 hours of English, they're also CCMR. If they pass an on-ramps course, they're CCMR. And then for those students that have not been successful on one of those, we have for those seniors where they take college prep English, college prep math. We pair that with Texas College Bridge, which prevents a student from having to take remedial courses for 100+ different universities and colleges in the state of Texas. From a career readiness perspective, as long as a student has been in 3 or more courses within a program of study, and then a TEA aligned and approved industry-based certification, they are deemed career ready. And then if a student is covered under special education, if their IEP committee determines them to be student workforce ready, they too are CCMR. That is our current practice and how we have achieved 94, 95, 96s for as many years as we have. TEA has, in the past year, they required all post-secondary institutions to submit their curriculum to TEA to evaluate in pairing with college prep courses. Now, colleges don't typically supply their curriculum to TEA, but what they have done is if an institution of higher learning provided their curriculum to TEA, TEA then said school districts can utilize said school, said curriculum with college prep courses, and they would then meet their CCMR components. The real issue came when they only approved 5 institutions of higher learning for English and 0 for mathematics. And so we do not have a pairing for college prep. In addition to that, they did not honor Texas College Bridge, which 100 colleges currently have. And so it is not an option for either one of those two. And so it's kind of left us empty-handed with that perspective. Additionally, TEA has been playing with the industry-based certifications, where they have created 3 buckets of certifications. A Tier 1 is a federally recognized certification, a Tier 2 is a state-recognized, and a Tier 3 is all the others. Tier 1 accounts for about 10% of the 280 certifications. Tier 2 is about another 15%, and Tier 3 is that remaining 75%. The caveat to all of that is our Tier 3 IBCs, only 5% of the graduating class can count towards CCMR moving forward. And so the good news for that is I was at a conference last week. There's a rumor out there that says that they may push this back to 2030, because obviously all of that is causing districts lots and lots and lots of heartburn. So just its impact to Midway ISD, roughly 25% of Midway ISD students take college prep, English and/or math in their senior year to become CCMR. And so if you take that off of the 95, 96, remembering that from a CCMR perspective, 40% of the student achievement score that we receive from accountability comes from CCMR, 40 being STAR, 40 being CCMR, and 20 being graduation rate. And so it's important to know that if we take 25 off of that, our score would dramatically diminish. Obviously, our current college prep math structure is not going to serve, and we're going to have to reevaluate. And then 90% of the IBCs that we currently offer are in Tier 3. Back to that, but only 3% of those students are actually utilizing that to earn CCMR. And so we have Allison Smith, her associate principal, the head counselor at Midway High School, myself, and the coordinator for college readiness met back in December, where we assessed the 330 juniors next year that had not yet met CCMR and created individualized plans. They're currently going through and wrapping up those junior advisement plans right now. We developed a new MOU. These are the options that we've newly created that are available to students for this coming year. Students, we created an MOU with McMurray University, whereby a student can take the dual credit math or English course. It is the remedial course that you would take in college if you had not passed the TSI. They can take the remedial course here for a much lower cost. And because it is a math and or English course, it automatically makes that student CCMR. And so that's a very viable option from that perspective. Hill College, right up the road in Hillsborough, was actually one of the 5 institutions selected to be for College Prep English. We've already established an MOU with them, and for next year, a student in College Prep English will be CCMR for the English. We still don't have the math. Region 12 and many around the state don't believe they will approve one for this year, and so we will go into next year without one there. And so working with the teaching and learning department as well as with Midway High School to revamp that course to be able to bolster student skills and do a lot of the remediation techniques you would see in other areas to make sure that those kids have the best chance to pass that. We're also revisiting all of our IBC offerings to improve some of those Tier 1, 2. It's good if they go back to 2030 because we can kind of turn that faucet on with some of that and hopefully go with it. We've obviously added already one new on-ramps course in Chem 2, but there's also 2 other courses that we're exploring as well that may be in the CTE world on-ramps, but if they were to complete those courses. And then additionally, if a student meets receiving a 4,000 or more on their English 2 EOC, they are actually eligible for 9 hours of dual credit. And so counselors, many of the students that don't traditionally think about utilizing dual credit options, counselors have really had conversations with those students so that potentially those students are available. And when you think about our English 2 STAR test, that's ranged somewhere between 72 and 78% over the last 3-4 years. And so that's a significant number of students that have access to dual credit, which have not traditionally been there in the past. Just so you see what our CCMR scores have been here in the past, I'm not going to go through those pieces, but that top number there, that 96.7% is there. Next year will be a bit of a challenge to reach that 96.7 with some of those metrics falling off. My hope is that we are able to keep that above a 90. I think we can, and I think we have a good plan moving forward. But there's just some of those students that rely heavily on that college prep course, and it not having its weight in that could add some complexities to that. With that, I'm going to stop and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. I just covered that really quickly, but the most important thing is I want you to know that changes are coming and that there is a plan moving forward and that they are working with individual students to be able to maximize that piece. Questions?
Did the state ask state and private colleges to give their curriculums to them, or just state?
So College Prep English and Math, when they first came about, what they asked institutions of higher learning to do is to get with, to draft MOUs and then to offer remediation courses, et cetera, for that. And so our institutions here, they provided some, here's what we think you should do, this type of thing. And what they found is that there were institutions across the state that basically didn't do anything. And so schools were offering college prep English and college prep math, and there wasn't any of the institutional higher learning components associated. And so it became a checkbox for everybody. And so they're coming back to create a more secure concept from that.
Was there any rationale behind the change in the industry-based certifications that you were told?
Not that I'm aware of.
So is it fair to say a takeaway from this is that we've got a state agency making it harder for us to serve our students?
So to go back and try to answer the question relative to the certifications, the commissioner went around over the past 18 months, and he was providing assessments relative to the magnitude at which students were receiving certifications. There is a dramatic disconnect within McLennan County, within Region 12, within our labor market, but also statewide about what is needed from a certification perspective. All certifications are not created equally. Some of the certifications require 300 and 400 hours of unpaid voluntary service. Some certifications cost $1,500 to take. Some certifications, I mean, some of these certifications are not attainable. Most of the tier ones are not attainable by a four-year high school student. But what they found is that there were a number of certifications that were be utilizing, again, as a checkbox, and not necessarily as intended. The problem is that they haven't gone back and fixed the curricular and teacher issues in the associated areas. Manufacturing is the number one growth needed area in our area, as well as a lot of areas statewide. And there's still no teacher prep programs in manufacturing. There's no curricular components associated with that. And manufacturing, it's a bigger piece than just a certification.
Sure.
And so they're trying to manage this with a certification to force folks into a box.
Okay.
So, great question.
Did
Any
these
other questions?
changes put more emphasis on TSI or less emphasis?
So the interesting aspect, their current structure, they're actually reducing the career component and placing more emphasis in the college component, which is counter to the governor's wishes. So yes, from our perspective, it will place more emphasis in TSI, dual credit, and AP.
Okay.
And looking at the numbers on the slide before this, that we have traditionally had very high numbers achieve CCMR through those top three anyway, right?
Correct.
So the overall impact on our ability to get to the end of the 90s is probably not as great. In other words, if you look at the district-wide, we'll probably still be okay. Well, really what's happening though is there's some individual areas and some individual students that are now not really being served as well as they could be because the state's changing all of these rules. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yes, the 25% of students, they will pass a math and/or.
Right.
And may need to take a college prep. If they need a college prep math, we don't have a metric outside of them just passing the TSI. And so our emphasis is going to be to get them to push to that. And we may lose some from that. And the reality is, the kids are going to be fine with what they do. It doesn't hurt them to get that remediation so that they go off to college and need it, they're just going to be as successful.
And I would say it's always been a trend that when the state tells us to focus on college readiness for so many years, then they change it and say, well, now you need to focus on career readiness. So we've been doing that, right? Because that was the last mandate, and now they're changing it back to focus more on college readiness.
The interesting component right now is the two folks, college and career, are actually two different entities within TEA, and they are almost counter to one another. And so it's 100% the truth.
Yeah.
So with CTE, I'm not going to cover near as much as I usually do. I just want you to be aware, I show you this slide every year. I'm not going to cover that. None of that's changed from our perspective. I do want you to be aware that research is obviously showcasing the students that progress further and deeper inside of CTE are more successful in the outcomes after high school, but also with their GPA, with grad rates, STAR test, EOCs, ACT, SAT, all the different components with it. That's a reason that it's a focus for us. The growth that you see there from 13.7 to 24.5, I would, my personal goal by 2030 is that we're above 50% from that perspective. That's where I hope to be with that. There's obviously funding components that are associated with that, but that's not why you do that. You do that because it's better for kids to be able to engage from that perspective. I just want to provide a general component that's associated with our current projects. Thank you guys for those of you that came out to the wedding where we had a nice collaboration that went through. Each and every one of the things that you see up here though provide relevance to CTE. And that's why students, back to that slide, that's why students stay in. We don't make kids stay in pathways. It's on CTE teachers to be engageable. It's on CTE teachers to be relevant. And it's on CTE teachers to remain connected to the industries that we have here in the Waco area. Those are the reasons that kids stay. And it's these that you see up here that are fantastic. It seems like yesterday that Dr. Allen stood, I think he sat right over there and shared about Tango Flight. And I'm in conversations with Mr. Wolf over here about how we're going to get an airplane out of Midway High School. And so
And I want to see that. I want to be there to see that.
it is it's been a whirlwind of crazy fun and fast. The best part of this is the teachers, the mentors, all of the donors that have been such a big piece of it. These kids are getting a life lesson like none other. They've changed some of the blueprints. They've now been put on back order. They've got a deadline to meet. Everybody's getting this, but that's real life, and that's what it is, and that's how it goes. And so it's been fantastic. They're on track. Our print shop is doing fantastic. The startup Waco venture that we had last year has been just as fruitful. Our clinicals remain extremely strong. I would imagine this next year we're going to have over 100 students in doctor's offices and pharmacies around. We're up to 78 this year. Our vet program continues to pump kids in and out of vet clinics. Our teacher prep program is on the rise. And then there's 3 projects that I have up there. The first one is a very unique one. I'm working directly with the Waco Chamber, with TSTC and the worksite, whereby with manufacturing and robotics, where we're looking to establish a process whereby kids come out of their sophomore year and begin a set of coursework that's going to be tied with TSTC as a junior. Then their senior year, this would be a group of students. Their senior year, they would actually spend half their day at the work site getting certified. It may be for dual credit, it may not be for dual credit. And then when they walk outside of Midway High School upon graduation, that they will walk directly in the doors of employment. And so we're piloting a piece with the Waco Chamber and TSTC. And so I hope to have that up and running at least from the early parts for this next school year, and then we can see the fruits of that again here in 2 years. We're doing a similar concept with some of our construction science. Our ag science program doesn't quite align as well, and so we're having to tweak some things, but I hope to have something this time when we sit down next year with a construction science kind of collaboration going along with it. We got a phenomenal...
We'll have some real life construction projects that they could intern on.
Yes, well, they're knocking on the door quite regularly.
Yep.
And then we've got a catering operation that we're hoping to kick off as well. The great thing about all of these, with the print shop, with our vet, with our floral, and many of these others, and the catering is another, those become financially self-serving. They run a business model. I do not provide vet, nor do I provide floral with monies. They generate their own through their own business models. And if we can do that throughout, these variations and fluctuations in funding just alleviate some of those costs while putting kids in business models. So it's some cool concepts to go with it. Yes, ma'am.
And I didn't know this till, when we have our month, superintendent month, my brain, school board member month. I've been to the high school several times, but last time I had the high school, I went into the ag department and I went to the vet class. And they groom and bathe dogs, and they do that for a fee. And but you can do that. You can schedule to have your dog taken up there, and they'll groom it, bathe it, and then you pick it up. And you get paid. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know that. So.
Any other questions?
Learning.
Oh, are you going to go to the future, that one?
The big thing is, this is kind of my mantra and that I always try to accomplish, that we always make sure that kids have access to being college and career. Ultimately, to continue to provide teachers with depth and connection to industry, that validates what they do, but that's the best PD that there is out there. The Waco Chamber and a lot of businesses have started to offer teacher externships, which are infinitely valuable because it provides relevancy to them to bring back. We're going to continue to align and look at our labor market data. We need to stop changing classes and certifications and all the things that go with it, because that makes that a challenge. But we want to continue, and what I talk to all teachers about is being relevant, being connected, and providing valuable pieces. Dr. Allen and I talked just recently about sometimes these courses, TEA looks at them as a specified course. But it's not, it's the things that they learn in that course that are totally applicable outside of the context of that course. Because you're problem solving, because you're doing, because you're thinking in a much more functional capacity. And so those are the lessons that are valuable that far exceed something like a floral design. But we want to remain responsive. This is my own personal, where I remain engaged in the legislative, political, and all local efforts. I'm highly involved with the chambers and the different aspects, so that I continue to remain relevant for teachers and students in Midway ISD as we move forward. Thank you, Pam, for making it go back.
Well, I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Not to sound like a broken record, but looking at number 5, how do we expect the legislative and political landscape might impact our CTE programs going forward, given the cycle that we're in? What questions might we be needing to ask our legislators throughout the current election cycle? Because as we've seen, things can change pretty quickly in Austin. A single decision can really transform what we need to be doing. So, as a community that's highly involved in CTE, what kinds of conversations do we need to be having with the state decision makers? It's not something you have to answer. I mean, if you
I can answer
tonight, but
we need to be tapped into Rick's brain because the data that he starts with today is all over the state of Texas. It's here, but we can go to many stretches of the state of Texas and find data that represents just as he said. And if we continue to tinker and do the things that we do, we're detracting from those success stories, because you can never get it right if we continue to change what we do. Now, change is okay if it's necessary and needed. But as we talk to legislators, we need to provide levels of consistency. We need to provide levels of financial support and other aspects that make them doable and functional and viable. And that CTE is a component to that, but that's the same across all sectors.
so maybe going forward, that's information we can keep pushing out to the community so that we can keep this discussion going forward. Thank you, Jess.
You bet. Thank you.
Good job.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Allen is going to talk to us about our CMAR presentation.
I'm going to talk about process. We actually have an action item later in the agenda, and I'm actually going to do this one from here because it's a pretty short number of slides. I know you've been to this before, most of you have been, but just as a quick reminder, so here are the dates. that are worth knowing. In December, you approved CMR's delivery method. RFP went out on the 12th of January. Deadline of proposals was February 2nd. We received 5 submissions. And there's an initial ranking done. We interviewed folks on February 5th, and on February 17th, we're bringing you a recommendation. Our committee was Scott Bland, a community member and local home builder, Wesley Brooks, Ken Wolf, Brad Shelton, and myself. I don't know, Ms. Wynn's ready. I don't know that we've had a non-school employee serve on one of these committees before. That was kind of important to me, that we make sure that we have people who don't work for us providing a level of oversight and transparency in the process. Ms. Wynn? And so we looked at several things here. You can see them bulleted. I'm not going to read them word for word. This is very typical for the kinds of things that you look at when you are evaluating potential construction managers at risk. And so later in the agenda, what you will see is a recommendation from the administration to name Masonic Construction to serve as the CMAR for Midway High School addition and renovation project. I wanted to go through the process kind of quickly so you'd see the steps that we went through and the people who were involved in it along the way. I also want to thank and recognize Ed Masonic and Aaron Miner for being here tonight. Your presence is meaningful to us, and we think shows the kind of commitment that we're looking for to make sure that we bring in a high quality product that is early and under budget.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Scott Bland, the community member. He's also a longtime Midway parent, and then when we did our facility study committee back before this last one, he was the chair of that committee. So very knowledgeable about all things that it takes to build new stuff in the district and the kids that it serves. So, and he remodeled my house.
Andy served on this latest facility.
Oh, that's
study
right.
committee.
Yes, I'm sorry I forgot about that, but
So.
very knowledgeable.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Allen. The next agenda item is discussion of real property. We are going to move that to the end of the meeting so we can go into closed session. Next, we have consideration items and the consent agenda, which is minutes of the January 2026 regularly scheduled board meeting, minutes of the February 5th, 2026 special called board meeting, early graduation request, amendments to District of Innovation Plan, FDA local admissions inter-district transfers, approve the procurement delivery method, and authorize the superintendent to negotiate contract to install LED lights. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda before we vote on it? I don't see anyone that wants to do that, so do I have a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Oh,
Second.
Sorry. Motion by Mr. Berry, second by Mr. Tellis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Thank you. Okay, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action related to Senate Bill 11, designated prayer and religious reading resolution. This has come to us from the state. We had it on the agenda last month as a discussion item, information item. And I just want to remind the board that our students are already able to do any type of Bible or religious study they would like to do before school or after school. They can even do it at lunch if they want to, if they have free time. So they already have the personal right to do whatever they would like to do.
Administration recommends the board move to maintain our current practice by declining the option to establish a time of religious reading, text, and prayer at each school campus.
Do I have a motion to accept administration's recommendation?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Green. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second was made by Mr. Witt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action approving a ranking of proposals in connection with RFP number 26-001 for construction manager at-risk services for the high school athletics addition and renovation. This is what Dr. Allen was referring to earlier.
Administration recommends that the board approve Masonic Construction in connection with RFP 26-001 for construction manager risk services at Midway High School athletic addition and renovation project.
Do I have a motion to accept the administration's recommendation?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Alford. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh.
A second by Ms. Watts. Any discussion?
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
Just because I figured I should ask it. These were very close on the scoring, but we're actually going with the second one. What's the
Yes.
rationale?
Best value in terms of long-term relationship with the district that demonstrates time and again bringing the district in on time and under budget, significantly under budget over time, is probably one of the biggest drivers. And the second piece of that was then a number of things that Masonic is able to do without subbing. And that keeps some of that more local and allows us to have faster response times when we do have challenges and difficulties. It's largely to do with the history of their excellence with the district over time.
Thank you. I didn't ask the question because I was questioning it as much as wanting to get that on the record.
No, it's a good question.
Thank you.
That's very good. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you, too, for waiting that long.
Yes, thank you for being here
Sorry for the
tonight.
extended run-up to that.
Appreciate all the work you do.
We appreciate your time. Okay, number 9D, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding MOU between Midway ISD and the City of Waco regarding Chapel Park and delegate authority to the superintendent to execute the MOU on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Does everybody remember what this? Okay. Everybody remembers, so Dr. Allen.
Administration recommends that the board take action to approve the MOU as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve the administration's recommendation?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Berry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Mr. Green. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Just to clarify, I've been reading through it, the city is responsible for the water and electrical for all of this. We're not paying for that on an ongoing basis.
Correct.
Okay.
And the maintenance, all
Right.
of it. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We are on a roll. 9E, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding real property as discussed in executive session. Well, we will do that after we have our closed session. So we don't have any consideration for personnel open meeting, do we?
No, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Would you like to do your superintendent communications before we go into closed session?
I will do two things briefly. First of all, at the dais, the board has a copy of draft goals that have been revised and adjusted as directed by the board as part of the goals discussion. And so those are draft for now. They'd be brought back to the board for final approval probably in March. If you have comments, thoughts, input, the fifth goal is the one you're probably going to be the most interested in. That's the one around marketing that's new. Please feel free to share that with me at any time, and we will make those edits and adjustments and bring them back to the board for further consideration. But just want to make sure you took a look at those. I think the final thing I might say on this is how thankful I am to be in a place where we're able to have hard decisions in extraordinarily civil and reasonably minded ways. Not everyone's able to have the kind of discussions that we have, and everybody can comport themselves in the way that they do. And it's one of the many, many blessings that we have in getting to serve here. I'm exceptionally proud of our staff.
Well said. Okay, thank you, Dr. Allen. Yes, Ms. Watts.
Well, I wonder if it might be worth noting that we have no, our incumbents are going to run unchallenged, and I just wanted to testify.
We will be canceling the call for election in March because there were no filings as well as no write-ins. And so congratulations to Ms. Vick and to Mr. Berry for defending your seats more or less by reputation or otherwise. Yeah.
And saving the district some money.
That's right. It's all about the money.
Legitimately does.
It's all about
In
the
light
money.
of the candidates that came forward to interview for the open board seat, the fact that no one stepped forward to run against Mr. Berry, I think is a credit to his qualifications and the job he's doing.
And the right
Don't
man.
shake your head.
Yes, and the
You've
right
been
man for
doing
the
it.
job. I agree.
I don't know if I go that far. But
Well,
Okay, any other comments? Okay. So I will now announce that we'll go into closed session session pursuant to Texas Government Code. Y'all, I'm having a bad night. Pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.072 regarding real estate and 551.074 regarding personnel.
You know, when Pete
And-
was having to do that job, he read those things off the list about for 20 years.
I'm going to
so-
put the gavel on you. We're recusing it.
When you've been doing this.
909.
Yeah.
Readers back on. Pam had to go to the bathroom, so it's gonna be one second before she gets back.
Make a motion that Pam do the best.
Oh, Lord.
Sometimes you need a moment to be human.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the open meeting at 10:12, 10:11. No action was taken in the closed session. Do we want to bring up again 9E, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding real properties discussed in executive session? Do I have a motion?
Yes, you
For
do
that item.
have a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the purchase of 40 acres of land as described in the executive session and authorize the superintendent, Dr. Chris Allen, to negotiate and execute a purchase sale agreement on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Well done. Okay, I have a second by Mr. Witt. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, that motion passes. Excellent. All right, we are now out of agenda items, and the meeting is closed, adjourned. Didn't even get the right words at the end. Oh, my gosh.